Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Welcome you all to the Monday, October 24th meeting of the Town of Falmouth Board of Selectmen, and invite you all to join us in a Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no proclamations this evening. Any announcements from the board? Time for public comment. If there's any item that someone would like to comment on that is not on our agenda, please come forward and do so. Keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. All right, thank you. We'll now move on to the minutes of our meetings. First is from July 25th, the public session.
Mr. Chair, the section on the Coonamessett Inn, I've already mentioned this to Jennifer. I think that we actually have to include the wording of the motion as part of our action, because it just simply says that we voted, but it doesn't, since it was a fairly detailed motion that I think was provided by town council, it should be a matter of the records. It's I don't know, page 7 or 8. I left my copy with Jennifer. So.
Yeah. You got it. Never mind, I wasn't there.
I actually think we're going to probably ask that to be attached as an addendum.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
So just leave the minutes as they are, but say, see addendum number 1.
Sounds good.
So with that change, move approval?
Any other changes to? I think you had another one also?
Oh, there was a wording change. Barbara Way.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I provided it to a couple of very minor typos that really don't change the meaning at all.
Okay, so just Scrivener errors that we had corrected?
Correct.
All right, so we have those 2 corrections, the Scrivener errors, and adding the addendum 1, listing the actual motion from the packet.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4 ayes and 1 abstention from Mr. Brown. Next are our minutes from the October 3rd meeting.
Again, it was a Scrivener's error, not significant. So I move approval.
Second?
I had a couple of things I thought
Yeah,
I
Mr.
wanted
Brown?
to mention of. Oh, it was the other one, not, I'm looking in the wrong minutes, excuse me. Just that when we talked about the petition article 24, I just mentioned that I thought it was a good idea for the Veterans Services to use the building. I don't know if that's appropriate to be included in the minutes.
What page, what number?
I think
Page
that's
4?
the next set of minutes from last week's meeting, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not on that?
I think we're still on the October 3rd.
Oh. Okay, excuse me. Well, that,
Are those,
October 3rd is when they were presented, not when we discussed them, is that right?
right? I think the ones from our meeting last week haven't been provided to us yet,
Yeah,
where we
I-
discussed it.
Okay.
At length. I think your comment was made
I'm
last meeting.
confusing that with this part of this page. Okay,
Yeah, it's confusing.
okay.
Anything else?
No.
Nope. Move approval?
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The ayes have it. Under summary of actions, the next is approve a request to extend the seasonal all alcoholic club license until January 15th, 2017 for the Seacoast Shores Association, 7 Fairview Lane, East Falmouth.
Move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The ayes have it. Next item is to approve a request from the Cape Verdean Club of Falmouth, 126 Sandwich Road, to conduct bingo on Thursdays from 4:30 to 10 p.m. Do we have anyone here from the Cape Verdean Club to present this?
Yes.
Yes, sir? If you would come to the podium, please, just so the audience at home can hear what we have to say.
Hi, I'm Wesley Lake, the president of the Cape Verdean Club. We've run bingo for 25 years or so. The last 3 or 4 years, they had shut it down, but we want to restart it. We've gotten many requests from the community to start it again, so we're trying to comply with that. It gives us the opportunity to give scholarships to the kids and provide some monies where needed in the community.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there alcohol provided during bingo?
No,
And is anyone under 18 years of
No.
age permitted?
no.
Thank you.
I had a question,
Yes, Mr. Patterson?
Mr. Chair. In reading through regulation, state regulations, it seems like there are some limits on how long these bingo games can run. And I didn't know whether,
Yes. Yeah,
because, you know,
5
you're
to 10.
correct.
Yeah. We usually
And
open
I
the
see-
doors at 4 o'clock, so they can get themselves organized and
Okay.
get their papers and tape before the game starts.
Okay, got it. Sounds good.
Are there special seats that they need to have?
If needed, we
No,
got
I mean, they want to get there early because there's
Oh,
the
well.
seat that really matters to them,
You
right?
can't do that, but yeah, they get in there early, they're rushing in there. Yeah, they definitely do that.
And Ms. Moran?
I just noticed on the point Mr. Patterson made, I believe this requires actual playing of the game between 6 PM and 10 midnight. So if you'd be, end by 10
Yeah.
already, you
Yes,
said. So if
right.
it starts around 6, you'd seem to come within that limitation.
Right.
I move approval of the request to extend the license.
Second?
Excuse me,
Oh,
to
sorry.
allow bingo, it's not extending a license, to permit bingo at the Cape Verdean Club.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the application for bingo on Thursdays. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
On behalf of the Cape Verdean Club, we thank you, and the public thanks you.
Have a good time.
Thank you.
Next on our administrative orders, first item is to vote to accept the fiscal year 17 bulletproof vest grant to the Falmouth Police Department. It's the grant amount of $3,200.
I move approval.
Second?
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The ayes have it.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a great asset.
Next item is to authorize a potential debt refinancing. We have our Finance Director, Jennifer Teet, here. Do you want to talk at all about it, or should we just go ahead with what's very clear, that we have a chance of lowering interest rate by almost 3%? Or net interest rate of 1.836%.
Exactly, after we apply a premium. I just want to let you know that we do monitor the interest rates, so if it becomes not advantageous at any time, then we won't do the refinancing. Just looking for an approval of the board to move ahead with it for the potential refinancing. We'd bring the paperwork to you around December 5th, but if at any time it's not, worth the town's worth it, then we won't do it, and we'd let you know.
I have one question.
Mr. Brown?
So when you have debt like this, is it like front-end loaded that the interest rate is higher going in the way a home mortgage could be?
No, well, some of our debt is structured that way, but most of it isn't, so it's declining, it's declining interest, so you're paying the same principal every year, and then the interest declines as you calculate it.
And
So the debt is structured, so it declines over time. And so usually when you have a debt refinancing, you usually only can do it when you're 10 years in on a debt issue. So right now, we're looking at the '07, and then an advance refunding for some of the '09 issues.
Okay. That was my next question. Thanks.
Okay.
It does involve signing lots of papers if we do it, though, so.
All right.
I'm going to make a motion to authorize the potential debt refinancing.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none.
Thank
The ayes
you.
have it.
Thank you. This looks like a significant savings.
The next item is to vote to accept a donation from the Falmouth Art Market in the amount of $1,200 to the Falmouth Cultural Council donation account.
I move approval with a thank
Appreciation.
you. With appreciation, that's the right word for it.
Second?
Motion second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. The ayes have it. Next item is to approve the purchase and sale agreement to acquire conservation restriction on land comprised of 70 acres and shown on Assessor's Map 1606-003-00A. And we do have a specific motion we need to have for this. This is the 70 acres land located off Thomas B. Landers Road.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Now, this is a conservation restriction, so who is the party that will actually be the owner of the land? Is it going to be the 300 Committee Trust land grant? I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify that, and I wanted people at home to understand that the town itself will not run. Is this the 300 Committee Land Trust Incorporated? Is that the firm that, the organization that will own this property?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Okay. So we're just simply purchasing the conservation restriction, which will be in perpetuity.
Right.
Do you need someone to actually read the paragraph?
Yes, please.
Okay. This proposed transaction is...
Just a motion up above.
Move to approve the purchase and sale agreement to acquire a conservation restriction on the land comprised of approximately 70 acres and shown as Assessor's Map 160600300A.
And,
And to approve the purchase and sale agreement.
no, it's to
No, I
authorize the town
think it's
manager.
and to authorize.
Oh,
You might
and-
have a different version.
I
I think you have a different version.
Why don't you finish? Now, why don't you do the motion then, please?
Or just, if you just want to finish just with this last section.
And to authorize the town manager to execute the same. Yeah, that's...
I know we had it in 2 seconds. Bob.
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, the ayes have it. I need to recuse myself on this next item. Ms. Moran?
I'll take it. Next item will be to approve a license agreement between Highfield Hall and the town of Falmouth for bike rack installation and maintenance at 56 Highfield Drive. Mr. Sousa, do you have anything in terms of background?
Well, just to confirm that it's been reviewed by town council, and it would authorize the installation of a bike rack on the Highfield property with the board's concurrence. Obviously, this is, alternative transportation is being encouraged, and this would be a step in that direction.
And just double checking, the proponent is not here, I understand? Okay, so any thoughts from the board?
One of the questions I have is this one of the bike racks that's actually funded through the CPC project with the Bikeways Committee?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. So this is essentially us authorizing it to be placed on land not owned by the town per se.
That's why there's a license
And
agreement,
that's why
correct?
there's a license agreement. Just
Yep.
make sure everybody understands, including
Thank
those
you.
folks at home.
That's right.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you.
Next item is to approve an amendment or the extension to the construction easement for Bosun's Marine.
I think this is a no-brainer. I move approval of the modification to the construction easement for the purposes of reconstructing the boat launch at White's Landing Road.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, the ayes have it. Be good to get that completed shortly.
Absolutely.
And that concludes our summary of actions. Next is item of business is the Water and Wastewater Monthly Report from Mr. Jack, our DPW Director. Moving right along on our agenda this evening, Mr. Jack. Just like these projects are.
And they are. Now we'll try to.
Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. Start out with the Little Pond Sewer Service Area. It's actually a little bit quicker. The original construction contract was $20.4 million, currently at $21.6, so it's about 1.2 above the original contract value with change orders. What's important here, it says September is 79% complete. That's based on the value of the money that has been paid out on the project so far. But in reality, that's closer to 85 to 87% complete at this time. They are going to be finishing up all the heavy construction by November, meaning that it will be before Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, the only other construction item would be paving of Spring Barge Road before the winter, so that that gets completed. That'll be done either the last week in November and or first week in December. But then they'll be shutting down for the winter with the exception of the crew will be out there putting in catch basins, and they're going to try to complete that before the first week of December as well. So there's about 34 catch basin structures to be put in along the length of Maravista and a couple of the side streets. So the good news is that the project is very much nearing its final stages, and that the actual construction disruptions on the project will be done by this November, and then final paving will occur in the spring. So the cash flow diagram, showing you that the original contract value was 20.41. That's the dark blue line. The lighter blue or greenish line is 21.64, where it's at right now. 1709 is what has been paid out. You can see that the graphs are following each other very closely, which is as it should be. What they've done and what they're doing in the Mara Vista area specifically, the gravity mains and laterals they've been installing. There is only one street remaining, which is Chestnut. They're working on that this week. So that's the last main of the entire project that is actually going in the ground. You'll see on the chart that I show you, after that, the only thing they're going to have is service connections off some of the streets, and they'll finish those up by Thanksgiving. Thereafter, they'll be starting the testing on the various mains, and that'll be for the low pressure as well as the high pressure, or low pressure as well as the gravity. So that'll be the entire run of Mara Vista, but the testing doesn't take that long. Mara Vista Avenue itself, I mentioned we'll be installing about 34 drainage structures, so they'll be continuing on with that. Final paving on spring bars for November. And then both of the lift stations, both the Alphonse Street lift station as well as the Mall lift station, they are complete. They're in the process of being started up and run through their testing, and then they would be able to be considered operational. So this was just the main that was going in on Bedford Street. The green thing in the middle is the actual gravity main that's about to be installed, and in front of the trench shoring is a manhole that was installed. This is the Chestnut Street gravity main going in. But as I said earlier, that once Chestnut is done, that's the last main that'll be going in. This was the milling that occurred on Route 28. I think I showed you this slide the last time. And this was the final paving, so this was just when it was done and just a couple of minutes before the road was opened up. So it's rare to stand in the middle during the day and be able to take a shot like this. So I took advantage of it and turned around and went the other way. But at least the police were there to make sure nothing happened. So the road turned out well. The final markings are in and on the road at the present time. This is the Alphonse Road lift station. The yellow items there are bollards in order to protect the building from vehicles. This is where we were last month. So the white areas up in the circle are the areas that needed mains and service connections. Where you see a yellow line going down in that white area, it means the main was installed. So last month we only had 4 roads that needed to be done, and this is where we're at now. So the last one for this week is Chestnut, and then just those other small streets there, there's 3 of them that require the service connections to be installed. So that was it for Little Pond.
Questions on Little Pond?
Just, have we gotten the kind of guidance from the property owners that we need to put the service in the right location? Is that moving along smoothly?
Very much.
Okay.
Very much so. Throughout the entire contract, there have been very few disagreements on locations, very few. So it's worked out very well. As a matter of fact, due to that level of cooperation between the engineers and Amy Lowell and the contractor themselves, working with the homeowners, they've actually been able to adjust quite a few, probably 30 of those connections to benefit the homeowner.
Right.
So it's worked very, very well.
And do we have any service that actually is hooked up and working now? Because I think you were inviting people in certain areas where, like in the Falmouth Heights area.
In the Falmouth Heights area is the area that is open for connections. There are 153 applications. 66 have actually connected. 22 or 24 are low pressure, and 42 were gravity.
How far along did you say the paving will be before the winter sets in?
As far as what?
How far along will the paving be in the Mara Vista area before winter?
We're going to pave, whatever's paved now is what the paving is going to be, and we're going to pave Spring Bars Road. So Spring Bars will have a final coat of paving. The rest of the roads, we had final trench restorations on the low pressure areas, but all of the gravity areas, they've just recently been dug, and we can't do the final paving on virtually all of those, so those will wait till the spring. Right. But they'll have to be maintained over the winter months.
What about the raised There's still some raised structures in the Route 28 area. Is that the part that the state's going to take care of, or?
I'm pleased to say that's all the state.
Okay.
Right now.
It is.
As you're aware, the gas mains started to go in this week. They were delayed by the state for whatever reason with the intersection work, so they didn't actually get started until late. They were supposed to start earlier this month. They are going to be working on the north lane from where the Mexican restaurant is all the way up to Nye Road throughout the winter in order that we can finalize this whole project in the spring, get everything paved by the spring. So they're willing to work through the winter in order to get that gas main and all the services transferred and everything over the winter time. So that'll be done, and then we'll be able to get that paved as well for the spring.
In the original construction contract we had, that's not including in the contingency, is that correct? For the Little Pond Sewer?
Oh, yes, we have contingency for it, yes.
Well, when we talked about the numbers being 20,000 in the original contract and now up to 21,400, that was worked into, we were expecting that to have that increase, or?
Absolutely. Every construction contract will have its contingency associated with it because there are always going to be the unknowns. Right now, the Little Pond Sewer Service Area stands at 6%. That means that it's 6% above the original contract value. But the contingency reserve that we have is over 10%.
That's what I thought.
So when this contract, in my opinion, at this point, and of course, you know, it's hard to have a crystal ball, I do believe that once we will have future change orders on the project that we still have to finalize, but there's also going to be credits associated with that, and some of them are going to be as substantial as some of the change orders are. I think that the net result, we're still probably going to be looking at roughly 6-7% by the end of the contract, and worst case scenario won't go over 10. So it's well within the budget allocation for the project, well within the budget allocation.
Long Pond?
So Long Pond, original contract, $40.9 million. Adjusted value is $40.72, so that means that it's about $200,000 at this point less than the original contract value. For September, it was 81% complete. Right about now, it's probably about 86, 85. This one is going to start up, hopefully, in February and March. At least Steve is pretty hopeful.
You can drop the hopefully word.
Okay, it's going to start up in February. Potential change orders that we're looking at here is about $93,000 for, I think, 7 items in the foreseeable future. So the contract's going well. Here we have the dark blue line is the adjusted contract value of $40.7 million. The lighter green line above it is the original contract value of $40.9, and then the red line is the amount that has been paid out thus far. So once again, you can see that the graph lines are following very closely as it should. So where we are, either completed or working on right now at the plant, they're going to be starting to energize some of the equipment. They're installing the chemical feed systems, which means pumps and connections and electrical connections have been facilitated. Installing the DAF equipment and piping. When you had seen the plant, you saw a lot of the holes in the ground in the plant, of which several were DAF and several were filters. But I had indicated at that time that the process hadn't been physically installed in the units yet. They're starting to do that now. So for the dissolved air flotation equipment, we have the mechanical systems with the chain drives and the skimmers were installed. They're installing the collection piping at the bottom, and I have a couple pictures to show you on that. For the filters, they're installing the under drains and also spray coating the interior of the filters, and then they'll be installing the media above the filter drains. And in this context, media doesn't mean the newspapers and things of that nature. Media in context here is what is going to be in the filter that is going to facilitate the process itself of filtration. So in this case, once the under drains are installed, the under drains are made of plastic, they go on the bottom, and then you have a bed of gravel that goes in above them, which supports the actual filtering media above it. And it's the equivalent of anthrafilt or activated carbon media that we'll be using, so it serves as a strainer as well as an adsorber. In the ozone building, they're installing mechanical equipment. That will be the ozone generators, and by generators, they're not generating power, they're generating ozone. And then they have the associated stainless steel piping equipment and gauges that is going in between them. It's a raw water pump station, starting to energize the pump, so all the pumps and electrical work is done there. On the right, that's a picture of the raw water pump station from the back. So this is taken from Long Pond. At the upper right is the MCC, that's the Motor Control Center. So most of the major units are in right now. The last item on this slide would be the residuals lagoons. There are actually 3 lagoons that we're going to be constructing, but the 2 biggest ones are the residual lagoons at about 800,000 each. One gets used at a time, the other one is the reserve. So they're installing the high-density polyethylene liners on that now. Exterior-wise on the building, it's not much different now than it has been, primarily because all of the exterior work is pretty much done. So this is showing you the rear from last month on the upper left, and the garage doors are now fully installed and operational on the bottom right. This is a shot of the pump chamber backwash as it stands today, and you can see, although the picture is not wide enough, you can see that mound of gravel on the right-hand side. There's a similar mound that goes along the other edge of the underground tankage, and what we will be doing is then covering that with about, I think, 6 inches of gravel, and then that'll be followed by another 6 inches of topsoil. So it's not intended that that's going to be a usable area for driving equipment or vehicles, but it will be landscaped accordingly. This is the plant fencing that is going in around the perimeter of the plant. So this is just coming off of the entrance road and heading south. These are the residuals lagoons as seen from the second story of the building. They're actually the black longitudinal holes in the ground up on the top of the page there, so they're side by side, and you can see that the liners are presently being installed. This is another shot from the ground level of the liners, and since we had some rain within the last few days, as you can see, the liner works, it's holding water. So what will happen here, the residuals from the plant, when we clean the filters or backwash the filters, as well as the material that comes off of the dissolved air flotation units will be pumped out to these lagoons and then periodically removed. So they're not intended to actually leach water into the ground. They're intended to hold the solids. There's another tank, another lagoon that's being built behind them that you couldn't see in the picture. That's where effluent or clear water coming off of those will be pumped to the other one, and that can leach to the ground. Some pictures of the plant interior, and I realize this is rather busy, but that's because a lot of the work right now, construction-wise, is going on the inside of the plant. So the center picture on top is showing you the ductwork going in for the HVAC system. You can see on the ground in that picture that there's quite a bit of materials and pumps being installed, as well as fencing around all of the openings for safety purposes. On the lower left, this is just above the flocculation chambers. So the devices that you can see standing up are the pumps, are the mixers, as well as the electrical disconnect units that are standing up straight. On the bottom right, this is on the end of the filters, looking from the second story down to the lower chamber area, where all the water that's coming out of the filters and or that would be going back into the filters to backwash them. This is the piping arrangement and valves that would facilitate the process. This is just some of the ozone equipment. In the middle here are the gauges and stainless steel conduits for processing the material, but the actual generator units are to the right and to the left of it. So where you see that blue tarp, that's where you would have a generator unit. These are the under drains. They're Leopold under drains. They're made of a high density type of plastic. They're several feet long. They go in sections, and it will cover the whole bottom of the tank, and you'll never see them again once they're installed. Their sole purpose, though, if you just filled that hole with sand, water would go down to the bottom, but there wouldn't be a means for it to get out. So this facilitates not only supporting the media above it, but gives it an open conduit at the bottom in order for the water to be able to leave the filter and to spread the water that's coming back up through those filter drains for backwash purposes. So here's just 2 pictures of the filters. The one on the upper left is receiving a coat of sealant. I believe there are 3 coats that go on that. So the one on the right, the under drains have already been installed there, but they covered them with plywood in order to facilitate staging and ladders being placed above them so they can finish sealing that particular filter tank. Chemical storage area, this is down in the first floor or basement area. So on the lower right, that's showing the respective tanks and their containment areas, which means that if a tank were to leak, the containment area can hold 110% of the volume of the tank. And then the chemical feed pumps are being installed now, and that's what's on the upper left. Those are actually rather small pumps. They're only about a foot high and maybe about 8 inches wide. So from a chemical feed perspective, they're rather small pumps considering the other larger pumps we have in the plant. This is the bottom of the dissolved air flotation tank. So this is the collector system that's being installed in the bottom in order to allow for the water to leave the tank because the clear water comes out through the bottom. So these are tubes that are put in. The lower right, you can barely see it a little bit, but you can see the holes in the side of each of those pipes. So they're perforated pipes in order to facilitate water being able to leave the tank. So the material that the tank takes out of the water floats to the top, it gets skimmed off and removed, and the clear water leaves the bottom of the tank. So this is going from the plant down toward Long Pond. So this is the road or pathway leading down toward the pond. And this is the trail right now that goes around the raw water pump station. You can't see the pump station, but it's off to the left here. Behind that storm fencing, you can see some small shrubs that have been installed as part of the landscaping. The gray line just above the shrubs on the left is the road that's going into the pump station. But as you can see, this is a nice area now for the path around the pond. Over on the right, all the area that's been disturbed has been seeded. The grass is growing, looks very good. So I think everybody will be pleased with that, those who use that path. This is the front of the plant last month. And this is the plant probably around September 23rd, an aerial shot. And this would be for the future. But there is one other thing. Hopefully. You have to admit, Falmouth is a beautiful town. That's a beautiful area. I think it's coming along very, very well. So,
Ms. Moran?
Just have a quick question. I don't even know if it makes sense at this point, but it seems like there's going to be a good amount of grass there, and having had the dry season that we did, is there any ability to use some of the water that's not drinking water, maybe for irrigation, or have you thought about that?
You're talking about the main plan itself, where we're going to be
Yeah, it
seeding
seems,
that
all of
area?
the drawings seem to show a lot of grass and grass that's sort of on a hill and,
Yes, we would have the ability to use residual water for that. But the goal here, as well as any other landscaping in town, I've always been a very strong proponent of xeriscaping, and therefore trying to utilize any and all materials that are either indigenous or low water use, so that includes grass. You can still have grass under a xeriscape project, but it would be a drought-resistant grass. And it is one of the reasons why, with the foot of material that's going above it, the purpose there is to provide a full 6 inches, which most people only use 4 on the topsoil, but then provide adequate drainage on the bottom with another 6 inches of sand. And that facilitates a much deeper root growth and still allows proper drainage to occur.
great, so that was brought into the design.
Right.
Great.
Anderson?
Yeah, you're very confident about the finishing schedule. Do we have any long lead materials or equipment that haven't shown up? Anything on back order at this point?
The only thing I think at this point that is a little bit behind are the windows. All right, so we're going to be having a discussion on that this week, because about now it should have already been accomplished, but that's about it. Everything else is pretty much on target.
Yeah, I mean, and he's sort of stepping outside the boundary a little bit. I keep him updated all the time.
It's a microphone.
We don't have definitive.
Yes, right, Steve. Oh, here it is there. Steve.
You can talk up there. Nobody can hear you.
No, he was really good about this. I work on the definitive delivery date schedules for things, and we have a lot of definitive dates. And we don't have definitive dates on the windows, which we're told will be here end of this month or early next month, which is when they should be here. But we don't have a ship date yet, so whenever we don't have a ship date, I get a little nervous. I didn't mean to make you nervous about it.
If we don't have any windows, we have nothing to break.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, we're hearing more and more concern about PFOs in our aquifer that have been leaching in from various sources, be it firefighting training places, but we've got the base just to the north of us, and we know that the groundwater flows down from the base. And then there's all the residential use of various chemicals that get used. Is this plant going to be able to remove those PFOs from the drink, from the pond? That's the source of this water, which comes from our aquifer.
I can't speak specifically to them, but I will speak in general about most of the contaminants that would appear in water that we would consider to be hazardous. And by hazardous, I mean an adverse effect on human health. One of the bigger benefits about the plant design is that the ozone and activated carbon serve a huge role with respect to just about any organic contaminant. So by virtue of being organic, it has carbon in its molecular structure. Carbon has an affinity to be attracted to carbon to begin with, so it's very effective at removing synthetic organic chemicals or volatile organic chemicals. Ozone is a very powerful oxidant. It will react with just about everything. Its purpose as part of this plant, although it's a powerful disinfectant, its primary purpose is not as a disinfectant. It is to break down organic material so that we don't wind up with offensive odors and other types of contaminants such as trialomethane formation. So it breaks those down to minimize the impact that would have. In a similar vein, however, for any of the organic chemicals with ozone, it is highly effective at removing a high percentage of a lot of organic chemicals. So for every chemical that would exist in a public water supply, they have what's known as best available technology. And so scientifically, they would determine what treatment methods are the best at a particular chemical. So if that were the substance of choice that we had to contend with, then we would look at it specifically for that. And some places do just that. They'll treat for one type of chemical contaminant. What we've tried to do is to look at what we theoretically believe we could get hit with and pick those technologies that are going to be beneficial across the board. So there's no such thing as a 100% guarantee on anything, and some are more difficult to remove than others, but the degree of assurance that this plant offers is high, very high.
Mr. Brown?
So now that this is nearing completion, is there going to be a a long-range plan for replacing pipes in the older sections of town. Is that ongoing? Can you tell us anything about?
You're going to start seeing the new beginning of that, if you will, at this town meeting with design of the Main Street main, because that's one of the older main systems that we have in town. It is time for it to go. So we're looking toward starting to design that. Worcester Court's another one that is on town meeting warrant because we have old mains and bad mains in that area, so we want to get those done before we pave the road. And then overall, we break our capital plan down really into two components. One that are really big projects. All right, let's take the Sippawisset area. That's something that's rather large, it's rather costly, and it would be done as a singular project. Then there are other ones that the department itself can do, and those would be done on an annualized basis. The only thing that's held us up over the past few years has been the economy. That obviously the town, as many towns, have had to cut back on a number of the capital initiatives in order to try to preserve the services, and we've done that. But as we start moving forward, I think Jennifer's here this evening, she's been great on trying to facilitate the capital planning, the operational planning, and everything else to allow all these to move forward. We have a long way to go in the distribution system, but when we proposed the plant, that became the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? What do you want to do first? Build the plant, fix the system. You have to start somewhere, however. So now we fix the source, and then we'll be working on the system. But it's something that we've been doing for over 20 years, too. We had a $6.6 million bond that did a lot of major transmission mains several years ago. The town meeting approved, and it went to the ballot, and it got approved at $6.6 million for some of the larger mains on the most aggressive roads. So we had Woods Hole Road, put new mains down. We went right through the Cherry-Hume intersection at Jones Road. 28A, disrupted that, put a new main in up there. 28 in East Falmouth, put a new main in down there. So we were able to get a lot of those in because the state was coming in to pave those roads. So we were smart enough to take advantage of that and replace the mains at that time. So that was a good project because it did a lot for the transmission system of the town. So those are usually the biggest and the most expensive. But there's a lot of work to do.
Thanks.
And I'm sure there's a lot of duplication within this plant. So what happens to our old plant? After March, that one's going to be disconnected with no use. We're not going to leave that in case we need it for something, right? I mean, it's no way we would ever be running pump water out of that again.
No, but it is historic. It is the original facility that was built in 1898. Has its original slate roof that's been repaired over the years. So it, Elvin by itself, is an historical structure. Now, the other two structures that are there, one is a tank, a green tank. It's a 1 million-gallon tank. That was a disinfection tank built in 1993. That was just for avoiding building a plant. Okay, we built a disinfection facility instead. So that tank and the building right next to it were built in 93. There's nothing historic about them, but the original plant is. So the original plant would remain. It would be mothballed, if you will. Probably be a nice place for a museum. So.
Questions? Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're going to be using that, Ray.
Next item is discussion of the senior center site and the related town meeting warrant articles. First item is to let the board know I will be on the agenda tomorrow. Mr. Suso and I will be with the school committee talking about, first suggesting it is probably appropriate for them to rescind their vote to transfer the property on Brick Hill Road to our jurisdiction, since we do not intend to put a building there, and then to start the process of looking for the transfer of land at the Gascanti Center from the football field in the future to be able to be accessed for the senior center. Sue, Julie, and I were on a conference call with Jill Bishop, also with Joel Bartman, asking him to come up with some plans to present to us for our November 7th meeting. We're going to ask the Finance Committee to join us in looking at what those plans could look like. It seems like the best direction to head is in the southwestern direction towards the police station for an addition. Heading further north does get us into some floodplain issues that we need to avoid, but there's a good chance that we can be able to build an addition in that direction that could really serve the purposes.
And also improved access from Dillingham, really look at expanding that.
Mr. Patterson?
So the thoughts would be that we would put parking on Gov Field, the portion down there, because obviously parking is already tight.
Right.
So that's where the parking entrance off of Dillingham would
Probably.
facilitate access to that parking.
You know, this is where we're going to give the architect some leeway, but,
Yeah.
you know, the idea we're pushing is that the Dillingham entrance might really be a senior center entrance with access to the building that would be senior center from that direction, and the main street access would be the typical community center. And they could go to either one, but really sort of saying they would be isolated a little bit that way, but not required.
I was just going to say, I like the idea of, looking at that build-out to that side, because it's not a small amount of space, depending on how you use it, if you can use it creatively, and it seems like it has far less challenges than maybe towards the back, so that's great. Looking forward to seeing what Joel comes up with.
Some of the ideas we've also put out there is one of the major uses of the current building is as the locker room for the football field, for the football team. If they're not going to be there, they won't need that space. The baseball team needs a lot less space. Maybe looking back at the possibility, there used to be an old locker room building, a separate building by the football field, into whether the Commodores would be interested in sponsoring a nice kind of baseball locker room area there that didn't have to be part of the community center, which would free up quite a bit more space in the building for either the senior center purposes or the rec center purposes.
And I think it would be a shame not to explore the construction in the lower area. I know it's wetland possibility, but it might not be as difficult as we perceive it to be. So I don't think we should give them too many restrictions.
Well, the first phone call Joel was going to make was about the buffer zone that needed to be in that corner. And that was the first call he was going to make the next morning to really find that out. That's exactly the question we had. That,
Okay.
Pushed through that.
And is there going to be any provision for keeping in mind that we may have one of these aquatic facilities come along and want to partner with us and kind of keep a space for them? Or?
Well, that was the other reason why I was suggesting we don't build towards Dillingham, because if they want to put their aquatic center there on that flood zone area, they can, it can always be done. It just
Right.
is to what kind of cost it can be, and it would be actually a fairly decent location that we would not be shutting off from being a possibility and saying, yep, it's right there, you can connect it, but that's not going to be part of our project, but we're not.
But when we're designing parking in that area, then maybe we take into consideration a potential future, save a space.
Yep.
Exactly.
All right.
So the next item we have is dealing with the articles we have at town meeting. And the first was Article 25, which is to appropriate some design and construction money for a new athletic field. I'm fairly certain that the Finance Committee has already made their recommendation, and we definitely postponement on that.
That is correct.
And I don't think we need to come up with trying to fight for a positive motion.
And
Article 26, I think their recommendation, which is the funding for design and engineering services for a new senior center, is where we will want to have a discussion with them as to what kind of money can we ask for at this town meeting. I would hope that we could come up with a plan to get enough money so that April town meeting, we could come to the town meeting with a request for construction funds with a fairly detailed plan as to what it is we want to build. And I think one of the things we can talk to the Finance Committee is how much money do we need to put into this article that we can fund out of certified free cash, because we can't go for borrowing at this time, but to be able to move forward with an owner's project manager, with an architect, and come up with some really good plans to come to town meeting in April saying, this is the plan we have, this is going to work for everyone, it's going to serve the needs of the seniors, serve the needs of the teens, it's going to be able to be, good parking, it's going to allow the baseball field to be there and to be able to move forward in that direction.
So we're going to try to come up with a number tonight?
I don't think we have the information to come. I think it's going to rely a little bit on what Joel comes back with, what his plan's going to be. He's going to have some costs then also, and it may not be till our meeting with the Finance Committee on November 7th that we're going to be able to have a number that we hope they can support. Sam?
Yeah, I would say that, and Julian can weigh in on this as well, because he was and Jennifer were at the Finance Committee, but they basically lacked any information at all to be able to vet this kind of an article, so that's where they stand. So they're looking for details and concepts before they'd be willing to support anything. I think that's a fair summary, is it not? So,
But at the same time, we need to pay something for preliminary plans, right? Are we already funded for that?
We're funded for the preliminary plans that are going to come to November town meeting.
Okay.
We have those monies, and so we should be able to come to November town meeting with a fairly decent schematic design saying, this is the space we're talking about, this is where we're going to put it, this is kind of what it would look like, if we can come back in April town meeting. I mean, so what we'd like to do is get enough money at the November town meeting to get closer to being architect plans, so that then in April, we can get the funding for construction, go to the town and get the vote in May, and then proceed right ahead with the project. Advantage to doing the construction also towards the police station is by not using the football field for any construction, we can actually get started right away. We can say, ideally, this will work without the parking in the football field, but it'd be much better to have that. But we can actually run the senior center, community center with a little bit of restricted parking, and then once the park is available, say now things are going to work really much more smoothly, but we have the building that we need to be able to run them.
So sort of a phasing plan if we need it.
We just won't schedule any activities during football games.
Right, which I think the positive thing in the short term is that generally, as of right now, the senior center doesn't really have night programming.
Right.
So it would work out well since the games are, mostly
right.
at night. So I think that phased approach, I think it balances some of the concerns we've heard from both
Exactly.
young folks and people who are playing sports, as well as seniors who are really anxious to get into a space that they can utilize sooner rather than later.
And in an ideal time situation, the other time where it can be very crowded is during the summertime. And we wouldn't be thinking it's going to happen in 2017, but there is a chance by 2018, if the football field has already been moved up to the high school, that we actually could have that for the next summer where it's crowded, having both parking situations available. Okay. Mr. Patterson.
Question for you, just a detail, but did you imply that the Gov Fuller Field was actually under the jurisdiction of the school committee?
That the football field, I believe, is. That's one of the things we still have to confirm.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm just surprised to hear that.
We're looking into it, but
Because I know when I was on the school committee, we were always asked to cost share improvements to the stands and facilities, and so my impression was that it actually was the town's property and not completely under the jurisdiction of the school committee, so should be investigated.
Right.
We'll sort that out. Correct.
Any other items to discuss on the senior center site?
So I'm sorry, just to clarify, we're going to make sure that we're asking, is Joel going to be able to provide us with any type of, he's just going to provide us with plans. We then know what the next step in general is going to cost us, correct?
Well,
We've talked about-
we're hoping to get some idea of cost from him so that we can get an idea of what the design costs are going to be.
Okay,
You know, ideal situation ends up being that it's going to be a $6 million building. We only need $600,000 in design.
Right.
We can probably fund that under certified free cash with the money we already have set aside, and it's not an issue. More likely, it's going to be a higher dollar figure. We can't fund it under certified free cash, so we'll have to fund part of it in the November town meeting to get the designs done over the winter, so we can come back in April with, we're going to need a little more money for design, and then we're going to need a big money for the construction, and ask at April town meeting, can we go to the town and ask for full funding of this?
okay. But Joel is going to, in between now and November 7th, he's going to really take a look at the site in a substantive way, looking at some of the potential challenges that
Yep.
might be there in order to give us more information on the 7th that we can then discuss with Finance Committee about actual numbers.
right, he's talking to engineers. I mean, he's really delving in as much as he can.
Okay,
And one issue that we already know about, and we're committed to solving this problem, is that there is a small playground that will have to be moved that was, I think, funded mostly by New Balance, and then was in honor of a family member, and we would, of course, make sure that that got moved appropriately. We're still in recognition, both of the New Balance and the family member of the donations, but would be moved to a fairly nearby site, but would not be removed.
I have a question. I mean, essentially what we're doing is saying that we should be able to have money authorized by a town meeting vote to fund the design portions of this project. What's the limit beyond which we can't go without actually going to the voters for a debt exclusion, or essentially a debt exclusion, or a bonding authorization?
it's really what's in our checking account. I mean, it's basically sort of that issue is,
Is
it's,
that truly it, or is there a state
we-
law
I'm
that?
just hoping.
Yeah, we sort of have a working number that we've understood with the finance committee, and Jennifer can weigh in on that, but it's in the $1 million ballpark, and it could well be that the construction and design plans fall within that realm.
I think what Sam's question is, how much money can we fund without going to town to authorize? And maybe that's a question Jennifer.
With
can
just
answer.
town meeting authorization. Mike's up here.
It's over here now,
Oh, hang on.
Jennifer, sorry.
I'd just like to remind everyone that fiscal policy was voted a couple of months ago, so
That's true.
what we were looking at was over $1 million would be, definitely be a debt exclusion. However, I just also like to remind the board about fiscal planning and just throwing numbers out and saying, okay, well, we need 800, 900,000, we want to take it from free cash. We do have a 10-year capital plan that we actually adhere to, something that we do give to the bond rating agencies and our auditors. So I just, just want to remind everyone of that. And the other, just, recommendation is, I'm sitting here, it's the first time really of kind of hearing about where the board is going, is, with a project of this magnitude, there are certain laws that we need to adhere to, and one of them is we need to have an owner's project manager on board before we can complete design. You're not going to have a full design in April. It takes a good, if you're looking, I know you're looking at anywhere between a phase 1 for Gus Canty and phase 2, so it's not the addition on the back or adaptive reuse, but somewhere in the middle, and you're looking at plans right now. I mean, it's a good 8 or 9 months before you're going to have architectural or construction plans. And then you'll have a full cost on those plans, because you'll have a cost estimator come in. And that takes time, and that's after you hire your owner's project manager. So I'm just cautioning having a full design for the April town meeting. There's just not enough time. The money will, it just, you have to procure all of this, all RFPs, bids, and things of that nature. So I just wanted to mention, the process.
What Jennifer's referring to is procurement for architectural services, because Mr. Bargman cannot do that. He cannot do your final construction drawings and all your final design. All he can deliver for us between now and town meeting would be conceptual sketch or sketches, which is what, as Doug's indicated, we've asked that he provide for us. So there is a pretty significant process yet to unfold.
And he is running up against that threshold. We've been using him for the last year, and we've amended the contract a couple times. So we are moving up against that threshold, so we are looking at procuring services.
That's what I just wanted to have some clarification on. So for Article 26, I mean, I thought the next step we would take, once we find a spot that, we have voted for and maybe have a idea of what the building could look like, I thought that was the next step, was that we get an owner's project manager who then does exactly what you just explained, procures the architecture, the engineering, and puts that together however long that takes. So is that what we're asking money for under Article 26? I guess my confusion is I thought that was the next step we take once we have a site.
It is.
That's
Okay.
what we were looking at, funding for an owner's project manager.
And we've already have some funding for
Right.
an owner's project manager. And
Yes.
we do have some funding that was allocated in the last April town meeting.
guess,
Because
yeah,
we wanted
just
to
some-
come up with some sort of schematic design.
Right. But we haven't used that yet because we didn't have a spot. So I guess when we talk about Article 26, when we are with Finance Committee, or in the interim, maybe we can really clarify what we have, I forget the number, was it 300,000?
Yeah, we have $289,000 left, and we still have $50,000 for an owner's project manager.
Okay, and so if we could just have some clarity about those numbers for what because I think that's where we're going next, right? Is to get
Well-
money, I mean, that's what the Article 26 is for.
Yeah, and let me just, sometimes I like to kind of go over where we were and where we are right now. The articles are on the warrant because they were submitted by, the Council on Aging, and they were really holding articles. They were placeholders because we were in the process of looking at the Coonamessett Inn. And so I think there was still some, wondering where were we going with this. So those were 2 placeholder articles, and that's kind of what started the ball rolling. They're really, there wasn't really a decision, and then there was another decision in the last couple of weeks, so and I haven't been at the meetings. So that's why the articles are on the warrant. The Finance Committee did vote on both articles indefinite postponement because they really don't have enough information, and any money that's allocated to this project would, design, you're looking at, probably $1 million field. It really are, they're ballot questions. These are large capital projects, and I think that's where the Finance Committee stands right now, is that, these are large capital projects that would go on the May ballot, so any money allocated wouldn't even be able to be spent until May. So I think what they were looking at and what they wrote in their explanation in the warrant booklet is to come back in April with a comprehensive plan of where you want it, and some renderings of what it might look like, and then you would go in April for full design and construction with the ballot question in May, and that might seem to be a little bit more feasible. So that's kind of where they were at the last meeting, and that's what they voted on the explanation of the town meeting warrant. And there's some money allocated, but we are up against, some more procurement and things of that nature, and that does take time.
Well, I still am going to try to push the Finance Committee that we might be able to at least move a little bit more money towards getting started with the design a little bit earlier than that. And I understand the issues, and we do have some money already laid aside for it, but I certainly hope we can go forward with an OPM and even with the preliminary designs. It wouldn't be the full design plans, but I would hope we could come back to the April town meeting with something more detailed than the schematics we're going to get from Joel Bartman.
And what are the rules about hiring the project manager? Do we need a complete construction documents?
No, with the new procurement rules, I voted back in 2006, you need to have an owner's project manager on board before you even start design. And so what that project manager really will represent the town and work for the town, and will sit with the engineer or the architect through the different phases of that design phase, just to make sure, that he's doing what we've contracted them to do and what we want to see. So and then when he or she will be overseeing the construction project, they have sat through the oversight of the design, and then they will oversee the actual construction as well. And that was amended in the procurement law in 2006.
And so, do they sometimes come on board before the preliminary designs even?
Well, they should be on board. I mean, once I think we've done a lot of site work, trying to figure out, where it's going to go, and you've had preliminary work on the site. So you wouldn't need to have them on right now, but once you've picked a site and you do start the schematic, or or even renderings or things of them. I wouldn't say renderings, but if you're going to start really a schematic, then you need to have the owner's project manager on board. When everybody's on board and says, yeah, this is where it's going to be, the owner's project manager will be the first to be procured.
And I know I just want to clarify that I didn't hear you. So you're thinking, and I know it's dangerous to throw out numbers, but I thought that I heard you say somewhere around, so for that initial piece with the OPM, that you're saying somewhere around $1 million is a number we're looking at?
Well, a full
that's
design.
For the full design.
Yeah, full
Right.
design with OPM,
Right.
we're probably looking at like $1.2 million at one of
Okay.
the, if we were looking at maybe a $9 million project.
Okay.
And then you have well, we won't talk about that, but, that
I'm just
all
trying
is
to get
part
us-
of it as well. Yeah, so that would be, you would probably maybe, it depends.
Mm-hmm.
But that would, about $1 million, $2 million, $3 million would be with an owner's project manager, which would be a debt exclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Of that, we already have 300 though.
We have 289,000.
But you said plus the 50 for.
And plus the 50 for the owner's,
The project.
that's strictly for the owner's project manager.
Right, but if we're
put
saying
aside.
1.2 or 1.3, including the project manager.
Yeah,
then-
that wouldn't be a full, 50,000 wouldn't be full for the
No,
project
of course
manager,
not.
just probably maybe for the design phase. You're probably looking at maybe with, maybe around 300,000, maybe 350.
So we should be looking for a project manager now, really, right?
Right.
Well,
And
the
what-
reason why I would like to go to the town meeting with actually a request for some money is so that we can put before town meeting a vote of approval of our request. So we can kind of act as a referendum saying, yes, town meeting is supportive of what we're doing, let's go ahead and get an OPM. If they don't vote in support of this, do we bother with an OPM because we're not getting their support for this plan? And that's the reason why I wouldn't mind trying to at least fund part of the design I know it's a better idea to get the total design funds, but we have 300 towards the 1.3. If we could get another 300, say, we're working in that direction, do you guys, do the town meeting, do you agree this is the right way to go? Then after the November town meeting, our next step would be to hire an OPM, start, put them on the job of trying to find an architect, let's move forward and be making progress in that direction.
Can I just make one point, and it's a procurement point, is that we would want to procure the full design. We wouldn't want to procure a third of the design.
We've procured a fourth of the design already.
Yeah, from the study, I'm just saying, when you go in for full construction documents, you usually want to do that in one procurement,
Right.
because you're having one designer and one architect, and, when you, I'd have to think about it a different way, but
Sorry,
it is one procurement.
sorry,
Yeah.
Sue's actually had her hand.
And the money, and they look at the money available. So if you were going to procure the project manager through the design, you would say, in the procurement documents, we have 50,000 allocated for the design phase, but, and we'd want to keep them on, and they would probably bid on that. It's the same thing with an architect. You could say, oh, we have this amount, set aside, but we need an additional, 800,000 in May. The best practice is to do one full procurement, so you know that what the cost is, and then you can allocate the cost. It's just, a suggestion.
Would it be
I'm not-
appropriate then to appropriate a sum of money at this meeting, the full 300 that we need for a project manager? And say, we want to make sure we have the full funding for that, so we can procure the project manager at least before April town meeting.
Well, a project manager, if we procured the project manager, we didn't have money for full design, then what happens if it didn't pass for full design, then, the project manager wouldn't.
No, I think you were right. We get the preliminary for town meeting, get their support, and then go for both at the same time in spring.
With nothing else beyond what we have at April town, so we do nothing between November town meeting and April town meeting.
I don't know. Chuck?
Sue,
I don't-
you just got to jump right in here.
Exactly,
raising their
it's a free-for-all now.
know,
My thought was that we should do some work between now and the Finance Committee about how we move this project, addressing the chair's final question, which is, are there ways that we can expedite that will work with procurement? So I don't think we can answer that right this moment, but I think we'll have that answer by Finance Committee meeting.
Can I just interject, Mr. Chairman, if I may? I think it's really critical to have the Finance Committee here with you,
Yes.
talking about this, and have them be collaborative and a partner in the whole concept moving forward to package and bring to town meeting. I think
Exactly.
that's really critical, so I certainly agree.
Sam?
I sat in on a session in January at the Massachusetts Municipal Association annual meeting, where several municipalities talked about their experience in large construction projects, and it was universal. They said, you really need a strong owner's project manager, and it will make a huge difference as to how smoothly the project goes through and how well you stay on budget. So I just wanted to mention that was a consensus of anecdotal lessons learned, if you will, from other municipalities. So it's something we want to screen very carefully.
And just one last point, I think at the very least, it would be really helpful, whatever we do, once we have feedback from Finance Committee and we can hear more from Jennifer in that conversation about some of the specifics of procurement, that we are able to share at town meeting and with the public some real clarity about these exact pieces and how it works and what numbers, because I think some people recognize we voted money and it's been sort of sitting there. Folks always want to know, where did that money go? And so just some real clarity about, this exact process that we're talking about. So even if things don't quite work time-wise, I think it's valuable that we're able to, we're still moving forward in the process, and we can really clarify what that process is now that we have a site. And I think we haven't ever really gotten to this point, so we've talked generally about what happens next, but not about those specifics. So I think that will be helpful, and regardless.
And I'd like to remind the board that you do have $289,000 sitting there. This is what was discussed at last April town meeting, and what we would try to come in at November. So there's still money there to get it to a certain point in April to have everybody look at renderings and what it might look at. So, I mean, $289,000, you know,
But we can't
is still
hire
there.
anybody, you said. You said we can't hire an owner's project manager until we have the full funding. We can't hire an architect without an OPM. What can we spend the money on?
Well, what we were just discussing, to come in with some renderings and what it would look at for April town meeting. That's
Who-
that's what I meant.
Who would
So-
do that?
No,
We don't-
maybe I'm misunderstanding where the board is going. I apologize
So
if I
maybe
do.
I'm mistaken too. Maybe we will be ready at town meeting to ask for the full funding at town meeting?
I think we're going to need more information to answer those specific questions. I do think we can prepare for our joint meeting with finance. For example, Megan's suggestion, I think we can do a timeline between now and the finance committee meeting that we will then be prepared to show at town meeting, those sorts of things. And because all these questions are about the process, and you know, in this agenda item, we're really just having a general discussion, which importantly and helpfully brought up all these questions from which we can make the plan.
And when will we meet with the finance committee?
November 7th. We're inviting them to come join us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next item is discussion of the potential medical marijuana dispensary. We have an application from 331 T-Ticket Highway. Mr. Duffy was going to give us a little bit of a preliminary discussion on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank Duffy, Town Council. I've been asked by the town manager to make a couple of opening remarks, probably because I think some people were confused at what was said at the last meeting. Medical marijuana dispensaries are regulated by the state, and the state also regulates the application process or the registration process for these dispensaries. So I'm just going to read you briefly from one of the regulations. I won't tell you which one, but it says, if available at the time of submission, a description of plans to ensure that the registered marijuana dispensary is or will be compliant with local codes, ordinance, and bylaws for the physical address of the dispensary and for the physical address of any additional location, if any, including a demonstration of support or non-opposition furnished by the local municipality. So part of the application process to be registered as a marijuana dispensary at the state level is this document, which is a simple letter from the Board of Selectmen, which is either a statement of non-opposition or a statement of support for the particular application that's submitted in Boston. Now, the statement of support or non-opposition is used by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, which is the registering agency, in the registration proceeding to determine the likelihood of successful siting of the registered marijuana dispensary in the proposed location. And the letter of non-opposition or the letter of support is essential for the registration proceeding. And an application, if it were to be submitted without one of these letters, is likely to be denied. So there is some local control here, and it rests with this board. And it's your determination of whether or not to issue a letter of non-opposition or a letter of support. So that brings the applicant to you or to the town manager or somewhere anyways to try and negotiate what has been called a community benefit agreement. And in the community benefit agreement, the applicant and the town agree to certain conditions for the operation of the registered marijuana dispensary, including financial payments to the community to offset the impacts that the community will experience by the presence of the registered marijuana dispensary in the community.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
before you pass it, can you just back up a little bit to the letter of approval or non-opposition? And just state clearly that we're not required to give that letter. We're not mandated to give that letter. In fact, we can say no
That's
to
true.
that letter. And that is our first line of control.
You do have the right to say no.
Thank you.
And However, if you are inclined to issue either a letter of non-opposition or a letter of support, you do have an opportunity to negotiate a community benefit agreement with the applicant. And in that community benefit agreement, there can be a number of benefits to the town, including financial incentives to cover the impacts of the present, created by the presence of the dispensary in the town. But you do have a right, as a board, to vote not to issue it. And an application, at least what I'm told, an application that's submitted to Boston without one will go nowhere and probably will not even be submitted to Boston.
That's a huge point, because last time, what we were more in the thought or the assumption or understanding that this was something that was inevitable, we had no control over. The state allows these marijuana facilities to be plunked in a town, even if the Board of Selectmen in that town does not approve it. So this is new information, clarification, and it sort of has been on the line of my original understanding, which is this is the first hurdle that these marijuana businesses need to come over. They've got to convince the Board of Selectmen to issue one of these approval letters, however tacitly it's written.
The letter, by the way, is very short. It's one
It is, it's like
paragraph
one
long.
paragraph. I've seen them.
Right, yeah, okay. So the opportunity presents itself then to negotiate a host community agreement. Now, the host community agreement, if you reach one, and again, it's subject to the vote of the board, the town manager doesn't do it, I don't do it, you do it, you vote it. But that is not part of the registration process, from my understanding, and it is not submitted to the Department of Public Health as part of the registration proceedings. So in other words, the Department of Public Health is not looking at it saying, well, Falmouth, you did a lousy job or you did a good job. They don't really care. That's strictly between the community and the applicant. One of the provisions of the...
You have another question, Mr. Moran?
I'm sorry, just because these are important steps
Yep,
as we
go
go
ahead.
along. So I'm just reading the RMD application process, and they talk about letters of support or non-opposition. And it says that the RMD, which is the applicant, may approach municipal officials to acquire letters of local support, and that is required for the citing profile portion of the application.
Yes.
So in other words, these applications don't even get looked at if we haven't said we approve.
Well, they might not even apply if they don't have a letter.
Right, but it does get in the record. It's part of, it is the citing profile portion of the application.
The information I have is if an application shows up in Boston without that letter, it goes in a pile of non-action. And one of the provisions of the registered marijuana dispensary law is that local communities must permit registered marijuana dispensaries in at least one zoning district in the town. And we have already addressed that issue. We have created, by special permit of the planning board, the opportunity for a registered marijuana dispensary in a B2 zoning district. And there are a number of them around town. And I believe the applicant, who will be the subject of your discussion tonight, has located a building in a B2 zoning district. Now, in terms of the community benefit agreement, I just want to briefly talk about that. These agreements have been negotiated by a number of cities and towns around the state. We have obtained copies of about half a dozen from other communities. We know of a few more. Chief Dunn just told me of a few more earlier this evening. But what it is it's an opportunity to say to the, you're going to come into our community, you're going to establish a registered marijuana dispensary as registered with the state. We believe there will be some consequences to this, including perhaps adverse impacts on the community by the presence. So therefore, we would like some benefits. Now, these benefits are primarily financial, in terms of either lump sum payments or a percentage of gross income. They also may include such things as a provision that in building a registered marijuana facility, you will hire local labor, you'll hire local people, you will use local suppliers, and you will have cooperation agreements with the police and other units. There's also in these agreements an identification of particular town departments that are most likely to be impacted by the presence of the registered marijuana dispensary. A couple of examples would be the police department and law enforcement, fire rescue department, human services, inspectional services, school department, and perhaps others. And these payments which are made to the town are treated when they are received by the town as general revenue, so they go into the general fund. But the typical community benefit agreement contains a provision where the Board of Selectmen makes an agreement with the applicant that to the extent you have control over those monies, you will recommend that they be appropriated to reimburse the affected departments for the services that they have to provide. So you would recommend to town meeting that these monies go to fund the extra budgets for the police, the fire, the human services, the school department, and so on and so forth. It's understood that it is the function of town meeting to be the appropriating authority, but you would at least make that recommendation as part of your part of the bargain. Now, one of the things that, as I commented in a memorandum to Mr. Suso, that is looming over this whole process of registered marijuana dispensaries is question, is it 4 on the ballot, where the voters will be asked to authorize the location of marijuana establishments in Massachusetts communities. And this law, if it passes, is going to differ substantially from the registered marijuana dispensary law in that there will be less local control over where they go. And so if you have some element of local control to locate registered marijuana dispensaries, which are the medical marijuana, you're not going to have the same level of control if question 4 passes.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Duffy? Mr. Patterson?
Well, I guess I'm going to ask the question, how long do we have before we actually negotiate this letter that you're proposing that we consider? In other words, can we wait until after November 8th when we know the results of that referendum?
I don't really have a sense of that. I'm sure that I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, from my perspective, I feel very uncomfortable making a decision for the town about allowing these kind of dispensaries into the town when I don't know the will of the voters. And I feel like this really kind of needs to be a referendum on the May ballot so that we get the feedback of exactly what our citizens would prefer.
You cannot put the question of registered marijuana dispensaries on the ballot.
But we could put whether we want to issue a letter of non-support.
No, you can't put that on the ballot either. You can, however, I believe, have a referendum question on the marijuana establishments, but that's only if question 4 passes, but it won't affect registered marijuana dispensaries.
Okay. Just one more. In terms of establishing what these medical marijuana dispensaries have by right, you're saying that by right they can, we have to entertain one within our municipality?
We have to have one zoning.
Opposite.
We have to have a zoning.
We just have to create the zoning
You have to
opportunity
create at least one zone where they can operate.
So we've done that.
Yes, we've done that, and also our bylaw says that it operates by special permit from the planning board, not the Board of Appeals.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Kishpaga?
I guess I have a question, and I don't know that you have an answer for this, but if the legislature created a law to allow medical marijuana dispensaries, and they undercut that law in practice by the fact that a town who does not support it, that application doesn't get looked at, that to me seems highly problematic. I mean, that's giving a right? I mean, it's codifying a law and then essentially giving every single town the right to deny a medical marijuana dispensary in their town by not issuing. I guess I just see it as it's just going to be a matter of time before that particular piece where an application doesn't have a letter of support from a town is going to be problematic.
Well,
I mean, I'm
remember
just raising the
this
issue.
wasn't created by the legislature. This was passed by an initiative on the ballot a couple of years ago.
Right, but the language, I'm just saying the language around I guess is it a CMR with the
Well,
language around the dispensaries?
I did not find, when I read the material, that said that your failure to have a letter of non-opposition or support would be fatal to an application.
You're just saying that's what you've heard.
But
is the
that's,
practice.
I believe, the practice, so it's subject to possible change.
I will, Mr. Chair, it's very clear, I mean, I have before me the guidance for municipalities regarding the medical use of marijuana, and it absolutely states that without our approval, it's not going to be here. So in terms of the legislation, it's sort of home rule or local choice. I mean, you look at alcohol, for example, the Board of Selectmen, there are a certain amount of licenses, it's depending on population and sort of a need in the area. There is such an establishment going in, I just know a couple, in Bourne and in Mashpee. We're not depriving citizens in Falmouth of having that opportunity. It's a hop, skip, and a jump. But, when you look at the actual things that are addressed in these regulations, if they go so far as to say, quote, ensure that trees, bushes, and other foliage outside of the RMD do not allow for a person or persons to conceal themselves from sight. I mean, there are all sorts of regulations which suggest that there could be criminality issues with respect to these establishments. Certainly, it could be a drain on our public services. That's why the money is supposed to, and is suggested, to go back to public services, because these establishments, look at gambling. If there are, some gambling establishments do have additional need for services, crime, that type of thing, then the additional funding which the town would get would support, for example, the police department having, extra drive-bys or extra, maybe they have to station someone there just to be sure that all the rules are followed. So those are, some of the things that are suggested. They can't be sited within a radius of 500 feet of a school, daycare center, or any facility in which children commonly congregate. So this is the state's advice to municipalities, and it's, we certainly, that is our gateway. Our gateway is to be able to not issue that letter of approval, and if we don't, there's, then the site review can't be done.
Right, no, I see that there are issues with it. I'm just saying, I think that it is just ripe for a problem in that if the practice is that letter is sort of required, when in fact, there's already a requirement to create zoning. So, I mean, I just think there's some conflict with an absolute requirement for a town to create appropriate zoning, and yet this backdoor piece where if a board doesn't issue this, really, it is proactive. You have to issue something, even if it's a non-opposition. So I'm just, it's interesting to hear this information from town council that there's a practice. And again, maybe after November 8th, all of this changes in some ways because the ballot question, while it's something different, does impact the question of marijuana in our communities to some
And
degree.
even if we were to, if the board was to go ahead and negotiate, if the question passes, it still might have no meaning in terms of other establishments coming around. So it's not like we should negotiate just in case, because then we're keeping the boundary tight. It's going to possibly all get thrown out anyway and start new if it passes.
Mr. Brown?
So the biggest problem I see with these things is I understand that people who get the medical marijuana cards can get really a lot of marijuana, and it's really super powerful, and it becomes a revenue generator for the people with the cards, and they end up selling the excess because they don't really need that much. And it brings this new super powerful pot that, I don't know, I don't think we need it.
Mr. Patterson?
No, I have to say, that's been my thinking as well. And when you look at the 500-foot radius, it includes all of the Stop and Shop, Ocean State Job parking lot, and then a good chunk of the Falmouth Mall parking lot. And it seems to me there's an awful lot of dealing that goes on in these kind of locations where two cars pull up next to each other. And you have just a general public coming and going of all ages. And the whole question of just, controlling the sale of these products to underage, under the age of 18 as well. So, yeah, I see a public health issue associated with this, and I'm not sure, I don't feel comfortable essentially agreeing to put a facility like this in Falmouth without a general consensus of the population here.
Well, sorry, except that the population voted as on a state, they voted on the question. I'm not a huge proponent of marijuana use, but I do think that there's a bit of a, we have bars all over and liquor stores. I think, in some ways there's problems to it, just like there are with gambling, and I think that you're raising those points. That's why there's this understanding that some of those funds go back into public services. But I just think that we need to keep in mind, yes, Falmouth is our own separate community, but as a whole, this was something that was passed by a vote. It did pass. It doesn't mean that we have to have it in our town, but it is something that the people of Massachusetts voted on.
But I would make the distinction between the people of Massachusetts voting, which includes a lot of large urban areas, much different demographics, and Falmouth voting. And I think I want to make sure that I'm honoring the preferences of this particular population. And again, I think the fact that anybody that is prescribed medical marijuana can go to a Mashpee or to a Bourne or to some location that's not all that far away to get their prescription filled. To me, that satisfies the fact that we're not precluding them having access to medical marijuana. What we're asking is, do we want to make it something that's sold readily in our community, illegally? And that's where we're looking at an impact to our services in town. Not only that, but perhaps even to the medical support practices in the town.
Do you have in that paperwork there the amount that they can get with the card?
I do not. It was on the website. I just didn't print that. But it's a good amount. You can also grow quite a bit. It's just not in this particular handout.
Mr. Chairman, there's some people here that may like to speak if you'd like them to.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Duffy.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I really don't want to take up a lot of your time. I know you're busy. My name is Philip Silverman. I represent a company called 7 Point, which was hoping to come before you to speak to you about this. What I really care about is that we sort of clear up some of the issues, and I think your town council has done a pretty good job, but there are some clarifications, if I can just take a few minutes to help you. The issue with respect to the letter of support or non-opposition, if you read the regulations that were passed by the state, it's not in there. It's in the application process. And so there's some real question as to, in the future, whether that is going to be a part of this at all. So I guess what we would say is you have an opportunity to talk to somebody to find out what they're planning to do. In all likelihood, you're not going to have that opportunity in the future, because what's going on is a lot of towns are saying we don't want this, period. In fact, the town of Wakefield attempted to do just that. They tried to ban it entirely, and in a case called the town, Martha Coakley versus the town of Wakefield, they went to court, and the Suffolk Superior Court said you cannot ban this. You can zone it, but you can't ban it. There's sort of a conflict here between these regulations, or not the regulations even, because the regulations do not have anything about a letter of support or non-opposition. There's a conflict between the application instructions that you're reading and what the court has said.
Excuse me, sir. I understand you're a lobbyist and you want to move your point forward. We don't have questions about anything that you're talking about.
If you don't want me to speak, that's fine.
What you're saying is that in the future, someone you might file a lawsuit because you think it should be one way or another. Wakefield didn't, you just said it was decided they have a zone. That's not us. We have a zone, the Wakefield case.
Wakefield decided that you can't ban this.
Right, well, right, we're not. It's in, we have the zone. We've complied with the law. You're talking about the future.
We're not looking to sue
And I'm
you.
not, what I'm saying is, you said you were going to answer some questions, or some none of a question wasn't asked on that, and there wasn't a misapprehension on it. So, I mean, and I understand lobbyists want to move the point, but I just don't think that's...
I'm just trying to provide some clarification. We've been dealing with this all over the state.
Right.
And I don't think you have the right impression. If you vote to not allow this period, arguably that's in violation of the Coakley decision.
That's not what we're talking about.
It seems to me that you are.
No, it isn't. We're talking about a letter of support.
And that's my point, is
No,
if
it
you
isn't.
refuse to give it, there's an argument, or certainly there will be in the future, that
We're
you're
not
banning
talking
it.
about the future. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
I think you're missing the point. We don't like this particular project at this time, so far. I mean,
We don't
a
really-
couple
I don't
of
think
us,
you know
we haven't
anything about
decided
the
anything.
project.
No, we
I'm
haven't,
just saying the location.
the application hasn't even really come forward to us
Right.
yet.
Well, you
We're
just said
still
you
in
don't
preliminary
like the
discussion.
location, but
I'm
you
just
zoned
saying,
it
my
there.
first impression, it's not anything about banning it.
But you zoned it there.
Right.
So you just said you don't like the location, but that's exactly where you zoned it and said it should be.
Well, it's not the only B3 in town.
Okay.
Oh,
And
excuse
that's
me,
a
B2.
process, that's a process that obviously you go through in the special permit process.
Yep.
I'm just trying to clarify that the voters, in fact, I believe the town of Falmouth voted 60% in favor of this, so I'm not sure what the question is regarding how the voters feel about this. I think they've spoken on this pretty clearly, because I don't know that many issues that get decided on a 60-40 basis. We're just looking for an opportunity to come and tell you what we're trying to do. And I just want it clear exactly, what the actual status of the law is. And I think, admittedly, it is in flux, and question 4 doesn't help it a great deal. But, we can help you try to understand that as well. Question 4, you actually do have a lot more control. A town vote can prohibit recreational sales entirely. That's pretty clear from question 4, as well as do time, place, and manner restrictions, zoning, all the things that you normally do. So I don't think that was entirely clear, but that's pretty clear under question 4 in section 3, local control, if you get a chance to take a look at that as well. So.
One question I did have, and maybe you can answer, and I understand it may be a biased answer, but I would like to hear your answer anyway.
Sure.
Is, I guess I was in the impression that with a medical card, it is fairly limited as to how much you can get, not that you're going to be able to get a fairly unlimited supply to be able to sell around.
Right. Any patient is allowed up to 10 ounces, and there are certain illnesses. You can imagine that somebody that's suffering from various forms of cancer that need help with their appetite, they can get up to 10 ounces, and they need it in order to do that. There's even waivers to get more for certain people.
And how often is that?
Every 60 days. Every 60 days. I want to point out one other thing that I think is important as well, just so you understand sort of how the process works in Massachusetts. Because people were saying, well, there's other places in Mashpee and they can get it there. One of the problems with the way that Massachusetts did roll this out is all of these businesses have to be what's called vertically integrated. You can't, this isn't like your local CVS where if they want a particular cough medicine that they don't have, they go and they just buy it wholesale from someplace and bring it in. Each one of these places has to grow their own and process their own medicine. So there's a limited number of types of medicine that you can produce in your own place. And different places will produce different types of medicine. So if you are suffering from a particular ailment, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get that at the Mashpee place or the place in Bourne or wherever. And so the idea here is to create a larger market that adapts to the needs of the people. So the notion that, well, just they can go to another place, we don't have to have it here. If you try to restrict it like that, I think you're going to be denying the patients what they were voted to be entitled to back when the referendum passed.
Do we have questions for
Yeah.
Mr. Brown?
You want to go first?
I just had a quick question. Can you remind me if each dispensary has a maximum that they're allowed to grow or to provide, or any restrictions on that piece of it?
They're supposed to only be growing for their projected patient numbers. That's the way it's supposed to be. They're not supposed to grow and they can't wholesale to other dispensaries. They can only do it based upon the number of patients that they expect to serve.
Mr. Brown?
So I have a question then. Are you saying that there's different types of marijuana for different types of illnesses?
Very much so.
Really?
Sure, I'll tell you a little bit about it. There's several different components in marijuana. One is called THC, which is the one that people are sort of familiar with. It gives people the high that they're familiar with. But there's another one called CBD. It's not psychoactive at all. And in fact, if you look up when you get home, Google Sanjay Gupta from CNN, who did a piece on a woman, a little girl named Charlotte, who was suffering from seizures, and this helped her immensely. And it was an all CBD blend. And what they do is they can extract the THC, separate it from the CBD, and they can create a product that's all CBD or mostly CBD with a little THC. They're learning more and more about the different blends of the product that help people. And so you can do it in different ways, and different illnesses respond to different things. Somebody that has appetite problems, suffering from cancer, will need more THC. It increases appetite. Somebody that is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't want a lot of THC. You want more of the CBD. That's what helped them. I'm not a medical expert. I got into this because my father-in-law is. He's a doctor at Mass General Hospital and has tried to explain some of this to me. It's complicated, and they're learning more every day about the different things that the medicine can do. But yeah, there are a lot of different blends. It's not just, here's something we grew, go ahead and smoke it. It doesn't work that way. And it's generally, in the medical, it's not smoked either. It's done through a vaporizer, because smoking is horrible for you. So, we're happy to come back. We were hoping to come back at some point and give a full presentation of what we're able to do. And I really wouldn't have interrupted your meeting, but I was a little bit concerned that there's really not enough information about the positive benefits for you, and we really look forward to being able to give that to you.
Just have a big problem with that volume of amount of.
I understand. This is, as I understand it, there are people with a need in that amount. That's my understanding of it.
I don't know how a person could function, but I guess.
Well, again, if you don't have the THC, I think CBD is apparently a tremendous pain reliever. That's what actually helps you function. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my reason for having this on the agenda is to get this information out to the public. This is something that could possibly be coming back to us. And I want to give them as much time to be able to get back to us and to give us some input. So there's no decision we're making tonight anyway.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if you desired to take any comments from anybody on the location, which is proposed currently, the 31 T-Ticket Highway.
Okay. Is anyone from the public who'd like to comment on the location of 31 of this proposed site? Okay. All right, our next item in our agenda are some committee appointments from the Falmouth Cultural Council. And this is actually cleaning up a little bit of housekeeping, that the prior chairman of the council had appointed these members without making sure that they came back to us to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, which is really what is required. And so they have been serving without being appointed, and I just wanted to make sure that we actually could appoint them. And we have 4 applicants before us. I'll see if any of them are here. Ian Goldsboro, Sam Houghton, Jane Pariah, or Bobby Balin.
Can I move to, we can just move to appoint them then?
Yep.
Do you want me to do them individually?
That's what happens when you don't show up at a meeting.
You're good to work.
So I'd move to appoint Ian Goldsboro to the Cultural Council for
His term would be ending June 30th, 2019.
for a term ending June 30th, 2013. Oh, I have that.
19.
19.
Do it as a group,
Excuse
or
me.
you
Do you
want to do it
as a group?
individually?
Well, just with their dates. You can do it as a group, but just to list their dates separately.
Okay. And then Sam Houghton with a term ending 6/30/18. And Jane Parhalia?
Pariah.
Sorry, Pariah? with a term ending 6/30/2018, and Bobby Balin with a term ending 6/30/2018.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
That will be great.
Yes.
Next item on our agenda is request for temporary access over town land for the concrete wall reconstruction at 4 Nichols Road. Mr. Borselli. I thought I saw you out there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent Shelby and Janet Mugari. So this is fairly straightforward and simple, but to make it a little simpler, I printed out some aerial photos of the lot in the town land adjacent. I'll be very brief.
Thank you.
You have the plans. So Mr. and Mrs. Modari recently acquired the property at 4 Nichols, and when they acquired it, they went into the purchase with eyes wide open about the fact that they needed to repair a failing concrete wall on the waterfront on their land that has frontage on Wacoit Bay. So one of the first orders of business they want to do to make things better for the property as far as improving it and making it safer is to replace this failing concrete wall. Since it's within the jurisdiction of Conservation Commission, we went to Conservation Commission. They received the project favorably. I believe there's a communication from Jennifer McKay to Diane Davidson that indicates that the commission closed their hearing. They have not issued their order of conditions yet, but they intend to vote in favor of the project. There's no work proposed on town land, but we're hoping that we can gain access to 4 Nichols from the north, from the paved parking lot that is at Wacoit Landing, which is the town boat ramp that allows for launching of boats into Wacoit Bay. There's a parking lot there, and the Modaris were hoping to gain access from the north common property line through the parking lot, just to get the equipment onto their land so that they can do the work necessary to fix the wall. They would do it in the off-season when there's no demand for the parking spaces, and the work would probably be no less than 2 weeks max, and it would only be to get in and out of the site. Otherwise, trees and other obstacles would have to be dealt with on the Modari property. And that's the only reason we're here. We're not looking for any license or anything like that. Just we thought it best to get permission to get access from the town land. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
And that would be via the parking lot, then via the beach, or?
Via the parking lot, not over the beach, just via the parking lot, more in the upland area adjacent to the house.
So would you go kind of from the parking lot right into their yard, essentially?
If you, this is the parking lot, this is the common boundary. They would come in just next to the shed, right here. And the wall that needs to be fixed is here. And they would stage and do all their work here. There'd be no access over the beach.
Would you have to, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Would you have to, the trees that are that common boundary, are they on the homeowner's property, or are they part of the town?
The trees that we're trying to avoid are actually on the south side.
No, I'm sorry, I just mean could you just tell me the boundary? It just looks from the picture like there's shrubs or something along there?
There's some very low-growing shrubs here that are on the property owner's land.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, I just wanted to know, because I'm assuming they're going to have to drive over some of them.
They're going to take those out and then replace them
Okay.
after
Can
they're done.
I just follow on that question? So Michael, there's no trees that are actually going to have to come down or be replaced as a result of that access?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Brown?
Just, I guess, would only be concerned if you're going to be using track machines, that they would put down, rubber
Mats.
protection mats for the asphalt there.
Absolutely.
Is there any plan to do any work on the groin?
Nope, no work on the groin.
I know the Concom would have taken care of that anyway, but I was just curious.
You still get to ask.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this, either in support or against it? I know it's not a hearing, but that's the question anyway. Pleasure of the board.
I think it's a good plan.
I second.
Take that as a motion to approve the access over town land for this project.
So moved.
In a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none? The ayes have it.
Thank you for your
Thank you very much.
cooperation.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Sure we need to sign this plan anyway, but we will anyway.
Okay.
Good luck.
Individual selectmen's reports. Mr. Patterson?
Go ahead.
Well, I'm glad to be the bearer of good news. We had the final building committee meeting for the Lawrence Windows Replacement Project, and it's substantially complete. There are certainly punch list items that have to be cleaned up, but the project is essentially done. All the windows are in. The work is of high quality, so we're very pleased with what's been done. And the good thing is that it looks like we're probably going to be about 15% under budget for the amount that was allocated as part of the referendum. Let's see, and that actually includes two sort of change orders that were included that weren't necessarily part of the original scope, and so we may not get the Massachusetts School Building Association subsidy for it, but that includes a handicap accessible door that's right adjacent to the auditorium, so that all you have to do is push a button. It is controlled from the office, so it would be switched on and off, but it allows somebody in a wheelchair or a walker who can't manually pull the door open and get around it and get in to actually get in by themselves. It was actually, I have to give credit to Jane Perry, who was at the time the chairman of the Disabilities Committee. She came up with that idea, and I brought it to the committee, and they agreed that this was the right time to do it, since doing the doors and the windows all around it were all part of this project. This would just be an accessory to that. The second additional item that got done was the replacement of the wood gutters that run along the back of the inside of that U-shaped building. Since the contractor who was replacing the windows had to put up staging, it gave access to that wooden gutter that would only be accessible with staging, because there's this cafeteria that is a one-story building that's underneath of it. And so you wouldn't be able to use a bucket truck to get up there to do that work without constructing staging. So it turns out that we were probably able to save somewhere in the order of $40,000 from having to do the work. Now, what was the condition of the gutter? Well, it had some saplings growing in it and lots of weeds in it. It was definitely showing rot. So it was something that was going to have to get done. And we were able to actually include it as part of this project, sharing the staging in order to be able to do it, saving the town approximately $40,000 for some future work that would be needed to replace those gutters. So that's it. The project came out very nicely. Our assigned owner's project manager was excellent. The architect that was assigned, this is by the Massachusetts School Building Association, and that process was under an accelerated repair program that's specific to working on school buildings, where there's an issue like this one, where there was a safety issue with these windows not having the balancers that prevented them from falling in guillotine-like fashion, because there was the aluminum channel at the bottom. So it was an accident waiting to happen. And so, nice to say, it's getting done under budget, and everything looks great.
I understand that they eliminated the skylights and roofed over them?
That's correct. And that was a consensus with the actual faculty and administration of the school and the school administration. With modern lighting, the exterior lighting really wasn't required. When they originally had the incandescent lamps, those round lamps like the old traditional school buildings had, light was dim, it wasn't necessarily the right temperature and color for art rooms and such. That was an issue, but now that's not an issue. And all those lights have been replaced as part of the energy savings program that the schools have participated in. So that natural light was no longer required, and it was going to be an additional cost. And so this is saving a cost not only now, but in the future, because those windows leaked quite a bit. And so that was an issue that the custodians had brought up. And so this was a simple solution to basically eliminate an ongoing problem, make it easier to maintain in the future.
And improve energy efficiency, because skylights are a big loser of energy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Brown?
So I have attended another beach committee meeting, and it's not a lot of activity. There's one businessman in town trying to bring in what's called Maui mats, which I guess are popular at some beaches, but it's not yet determined what they'll decide. But that's just the news of the beach committee. And then they mentioned that Don Hoffer is retiring, and next month will probably be his last attendance at a meeting, because in the winter they don't meet very much. And wondering if we should send a letter of thanks for his 15 years of service. Would you do that anyway, or should we have to decide that? Is that?
Well, certainly agree with you.
I'm just saying, I'm just curious how that works, if we typically do that.
There's usually a retirement party, and the town manager's office coordinates it.
Right. Yeah, I don't have any date for that yet. Of course, Don is going to be employed through the end of the year, calendar year, so no fixed date on that. But we always take the opportunity to thank particularly a long-term employee like Don. But I don't want to suggest that the board should refrain from sending whatever kind of thank you you would prefer to do as well. So I want to certainly follow your lead. But we will have those opportunities coming in the future.
How is that usually handled? Is there a policy on sending a letter, or?
I think we just asked the chairman to send it on our behalf.
And I think that's commonly something like that, or recognition is done around the time when there's sort of the official retirement kind of party or send-off. So I think it doesn't have to be anything that's formally voted on. It's something that we can, just discuss and, suggest. And the chair can do.
We'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it wasn't any official attendance, but I went to that opioid summit tonight that was over at the Coffee Obsession, and it was interesting to learn that about 10 years ago, we lost about a third of our rehabilitation beds, and it had a pretty significant impact right away, because less people are getting rehabilitated. And I was very surprised to learn that there's no treatment facilities on the Vineyard or Nantucket, so they all have to ship out over to Hyannis mostly. And
Or Taunton.
yeah, or maybe Falmouth.
They come here. They come here. Well, it depends. If they're sectioned, they come here to, the Vineyard comes here to Falmouth, and then they get their bed wherever a bed is available. But they come to the district court here.
And they were talking about having new laws about, controlling fentanyl, which is a deadly ingredient that they mix into the heroin to make it sell better or whatever, more powerful. And now there's a new drug called Centafil, which is the new thing to watch out for, I guess, and it's coming soon to our neighborhood. So just want to make you alert of that. It's a big problem. We need to, I don't know what we can do really, except just try to pay attention and learn as we go.
Well, I think that for anybody that's inclined to use these substances, they should recognize that there is no quality control over the mixing of these substances. So you don't know how much fentanyl you're getting, or this new drug comes into the market, how much fentanyl as well.
Yeah.
There's no quality control.
I think unfortunately the problem is most folks they graduate to that. They're starting on a pill form that seems less risky, and then by the time they're getting to heroin, they're in a full-blown opioid addiction. So I don't think, I think most studies show that most individuals start with prescriptions and graduate to, I think my point is I don't think they're in a state to think about the quality, the additives that are in some of these substances, so.
And I just attended a wake this Saturday. Another young person passed, unfortunately. And I think the biggest thing, the common thread is it's people that are trying to recover and they have a period of sobriety and they go back and use the heroin again, not realizing that these new powerful things are added into it and it's deadly. So maybe a little more awareness for that too. Sad.
Can you remind me from the EDIC as to when the date of the bus depot project, is that coming up before our next meeting?
I will.
November 1st.
It is
Yes.
November 1st?
November 1st? Okay, so it is.
I think that was in the morning.
It's a groundbreaking.
Right.
Correct.
And also, we will not be meeting next Monday, it will be Halloween, and also to remind the public that we have a number of road races happening this weekend, just to be aware of the traffic for the half marathon on Saturday and the full marathon on Sunday, but also the road race, I guess, going out, or on the grounds.
Falmouth in the fall?
No, I was talking
On the
about
ground of the
there's
fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds.
Yeah,
Yeah, fairgrounds will be on their property having their race, but.
Just quickly, it's not really a report, but just, I think apropos to what Doug was talking about, I think it's been a really tough couple of weeks for our first responders in town. We've had a number of really challenging things, I think, that fire and rescue and the police department have had to respond to, so just a big thank you to them. We sort of read the summary, and these folks are on the ground, whatever the situation may be, and that's no small thing to have that happening on a regular basis. So just a big thanks to all of the folks who work as first responders in our town, including the folks at Falmouth Hospital and everywhere else.
Very good point.
Thanks for bringing that up.
And is there a possibility that we're going to have a joint planning board meeting soon to appoint their new person?
We have that scheduled for Tuesday, November 1st at 6 o'clock is when they've
Just
asked if
came
we
out
can do
today.
that.
Okay.
It's probably in your email.
November
November 6th.
November 1st, right?
What's the date?
Sorry.
I think it's November 2nd.
I thought it was on Tuesday.
I think it's-
Then that's the 2nd, I'm sorry. Yep.
Yeah, I think it is the 2nd.
I think they're thinking it's on
That's
Monday.
their normal meeting night, Tuesdays.
Theirs
They're
is,
normal.
but I think
Correct.
they're thinking that they're coming here.
I have it for November 1st. It's the 1st of November. Joint
Monday.
planning board meeting at
But that
6
is a
PM.
Tuesday, right?
It's
No,
a
it's
Tuesday.
Monday.
Nope, that's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
Yes.
Oh, that's it, it's a Tuesday.
So
Oh, excuse me, you're right,
That's why,
yes.
that's why, it just,
Sorry.
no, everyone was right, just like.
Okay. Town managers report?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I was pleased to join the Finance Committee this past Tuesday evening for their final scheduled meeting dealing with November town meeting warrant articles. I know Selectman Patterson referred to some of their deliberations earlier, as he is a regular attendee as well. I greatly appreciate the informed discussion and deliberation of the Finance Committee members in this process, and as you noted, Mr. Chairman, we'll be inviting them to join members of the board on your next regular meeting on Monday, November 7th. Stephanie and I were pleased to attend the Chamber of Commerce annual 10K fundraising event at the Coonamessett Inn this past Thursday. And as I noted, as a reminder, your next meeting is Monday, November 7th. And in the meantime, happy Halloween to all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.